Welcome everyone to episode 6, highlighting Twilight School, 5 Mile Creek School, and Crystal Creek School. And I am pleased to welcome back Sue Farrell-Holler, who is sitting in for Linda Schofield, who is away with family this filming weekend. You may remember Sue as Flapper Sue from the first episode.
Thanks, Beth. It's exciting to be back. These 3 schools have some interesting stories and connections. Let's look at the map from the last episode so we can see how close these 3 schools were situated.
5 Mile Creek School. And this one is Twilight School. And this is where Crystal Creek School was situated. An interesting result of changes in populations still happens today. For example, in Canada's large cities, when children in an area grow up and leave their homes, the local schools may be modified for other needs, and that may be temporary or permanent. In our one-room schools in the county of Grande Prairie, changes in population were handled in unique and practical ways for that time. For example, 5 Mile Creek School was moved closer to a new settlement when, well, you'll find out when you listen to Lynn Caldwell read from Mary Nutting's book.
Five Mile Creek School District, number 3287, directly east of the newly incorporated village of Grande Prairie, was organized August 10, 1915. A log schoolhouse was built on Jack Axon's land, the southeast 72.5 west of the 6th. That first year, all the pupils were Blimkeys, from the Gustav and John Blimke families, with Miss Moody as the teacher. The school term began in August, with July and January being the holiday months. This practice continued for more than 10 years. By 1925, most of the children of the district were beyond school age. There was, however, a new settlement with 25 to 30 children south of the 5 Mile Creek, so the district was extended to Bear Creek, and the school buildings moved 2 miles south to the southeast of 2871.5 west of the 6th. The school, in its new location, was opened the first Monday in August 1925. That year, Miss Phyllis Lamb was the teacher with a record enrollment in grade 1, with some students being 16 years of age. Enrollment was consistently around 33 to 34 students during the early 1930s. In 1934, a momentous meeting was held to propose 5 Mile Creek add another room as a high school. Consequently, on July 19, 1934, the Northern Tribune advertised, "Tenders will be received by the Board of Trustees of the 5 Mile School District for the erection of a new room and alterations to the old log school building." By September that year, the schools were ready, with Miss Gertrude Brightwell to teach the elementary grades and Brian Piercy as teacher in the senior room. The high school students, which numbered 18 in 1936, included those from nearby districts such as Twilight and Crystal Creek. There were 27 children in the elementary room. During the years that followed, student numbers fluctuated, determining which grades would be taught in which years. With the shortage of qualified teachers during the war years in 1941, the decision was made to send the high school students to Grande Prairie. The second room was then used for the junior high. The 5 Mile Creek school site also contained a one-room teacherage and a school barn, which provoked numerous quarrels over who could use it and who could clean it. The school barn and teacherage were heavily used for community celebrations, and when the school closed under consolidation in 1956, the site and buildings were sold to the 5 Mile Community Association for $1. Karen on the 5 Mile Creek schoolyard tells the story.
We were so fortunate to have the opportunity to interview Ernie Pellerin, who was a student at 5 Mile Creek School for grades 6 to 9, way back from 1941 to 1945. He is 94 years old and has a great memory. He has so many interesting stories. I wish we could have included all of them.
I think it was named after a little creek that starts where the school was and goes for 5 miles until it runs into Deep Creek, and which runs into the Bear Creek, and Bear Creek runs into the Wapiti, and that's the history of the creeks. It was quite a job for the teachers. That one teacher with all those grades to look after all that was something, and it was more with books and actual writing. Of course, we started out with the old nib pen and the inkwell, We'd just have to thaw out in the morning. It would freeze up at night in the wintertime. 40 below was quite often a stopping point, but in those days we could get 40 below for 3 weeks, and you didn't miss 3 weeks of school. So you went pretty well all the time. Yeah. I had the team hooked onto the cutter one time in the wintertime, and I'd give the kids a ride home down to a mile from the school, and then they'd get off and go their way, and I'd go half a mile to my place. So we turned, everybody unloaded, and I started out, and the horses looked at each other, chomped down on the bit, and took off. There was no way I could hold them. Right up to the barn door. So then we hooked them up to the big sleigh and took them out in the field, give them a run. Well, we learnt the old conventional square dancing, and then they started up with what they call the modern square dancing that you had to take lessons for and learn and that. And it was a couple hours of really good entertainment. You really had to pay attention what you were doing, and you forgot all your problems. You were zeroed in on square dancing, and it was lots of fun, yes, for sure. Just about every little community has a square dance club at one time.
You may have heard the connection to our other 2 schools in that reading. Twilight School was built for the overflow when 5 Mile Creek School became too small for the increasing number of students. I love how that school was named.
And I am so impressed with their sports programs. Their ladies softball team played at a very high level. Thanks to Wendy Trepanier for telling us all about Twilight School as she reads from Mary Nutting's book.
Twilight School District was authorized June 7th, 1939, when the population of the 5 Mile Creek School District became too much for one school. One original suggestion for the name was Skunk Hollow, because a nearby coyote den had become home to a family of skunks. But reason prevailed, and Twilight was chosen. Debentures were issued, tenders were requested, and the school was built on the northeast quarter of Section 4, Township 72, Range Road 5, west of the 6th. It opened right after New Year's 1930, with 20-year-old Charles Cromie teaching 21 students in grades 1 through 10. Twilight School was well supplied from the start, and no student had to walk more than 2 miles to school. Like all other schools in the Great Depression, however, they had to reduce expenses in the 1930s. One way they did this was for each family to donate a load of firewood, and a work bee would be held to saw it. The settlers showed their support in other ways too, as seen in a letter sent to a prospective teacher regarding the teacherage. You are supposed to supply your own bedding. The other necessities are furnished. The neighbors will bring the mail for you, as most of them go to town 2 or 3 times a week. You will be met at the station. This district was marked by an unusual unity among the ratepayers regarding the school. The school inspectors received no written complaints, and there were no statements of finances in arrears. In fact, there weren't even any board minutes. It seems that the ratepayers were happy to leave everything up to a school secretary and did not even have a board of directors. Consistently good reports from the school inspector supported their contentment. The district is to be congratulated. Conditions are very satisfactory. 1930. Your school is under very capable management, and the children are enjoying the hours spent at school. 1935. Classes excel in physical training. Very fine training in singing. 1936. Sports were important to the Twilight District. One of the popular school activities was softball, and in 1937, Twilight formed a competitive ladies softball team. The girls financed their equipment by picking raspberries, which they traded at Portia's Hardware for bats and balls. The Twilight team won 41 consecutive games between 1939 and 1942 and won the trophy 6 years in a row. In 1943, Betty Carveth left to join the Edmonton Walkrights and went on to play for the Rockford Peaches in the All-American Girls Softball League. When the Grande Prairie School Division was formed in 1937, the ratepayers at Twilight voted unanimously not to join the divisional board, but to retain control of their own school. As the years advanced, however, they realized their children would only benefit from the larger schools. In 1950, with only 11 students left, they agreed to bus the children to Grande Prairie. 2 years later, they gave their consent to move the school to Tow Run District at Webster. The teacherage was also moved, and the barn, outbuildings, and the site were sold. After the Tow Run School District closed in 1957, the old Twilight School was once again moved, this time to the southeast quarter of Section 26, Township 72, Range Road 4, west of the 6th.
The Twilight School population seems so cohesive and cooperative, but things weren't so smooth for Crystal Creek School, although progress did happen. You may recognize this next reader. Students in the Crystal Creek area, east of Grande Prairie, attended classes as early as 1914 in the Deep Creek Baptist Church. Mrs. Bill Whitford was the teacher. On August 17, 1916, the Crystal Creek School District, number 3403, was formed. The school was built the next summer on the southeast corner of Southwest 572 4 west of the 6th. But the school sat vacant for a number of months due to a lack of a teacher. However, in 1918, Miss Dyde taught for the summer months. At the time, no one in the district was particularly eager to board the teacher, so an abandoned cabin not far from the school was offered to serve as the teacherage. While she was getting the cabin ready, she boarded with Secretary C.W. Johnson, better known as Deep Creek Johnson. She never moved into the cabin, preferring instead the fixed-up attic in the Johnson log home. By the early 1930s, the district had grown, and with it, the number of children. The school building was enlarged, and grade 9 was added. For the next decade, the school population was consistently 30 or more students. It peaked in 1934 when there were 39 children, but a close second was 34 students, 8 of them in grade 9, in 1938. That's the year the entire board resigned. Relationships between the board, usually the parents of the children, and the teacher could be delicate. Earlier in 1933, trustees moved that the teacher be asked to send a monthly report of the children's progress home to parents, and in 1935 passed a motion forbidding detention after school for any student. The first small teacherage was added to the site in 1933. The teacher paid all the costs and furnishings from her own resources. The next year, a new barn was constructed because students were coming by horse from long distances to the north and the south. Water supply was from a cistern in the yard, and the site also contained outbuildings and a coal shed. In 1954, a new teacherage from the Morningview district was moved in. A year later, in 1955, there were only 13 students left at Crystal Creek School. The school closed in 1956 when buses began transporting students to Grande Prairie. The school building was sold and became a house.
That was another excerpt from A Grande Education. Thanks to Grande Prairie Seniors Reading Theatre for helping to bring Mary Nutting's work to life. Tune in for our next episode featuring several schools, including Bighorn and Moldy.
You know, it's interesting to me how the old schools were named. Mostly, they were named for their geographical locations. Lower Beaver Lodge, Buffalo Lake, Teepee Creek, or became the namesakes of early pioneers. As we've been reading about local history, we've come across some interesting people that schools could have been named for. Deep Creek Johnson, Wapiti Brown, Rutabaga Johnson,
Unfortunately, we didn't end up with a rutabaga school.
Oh, Beth, I was wondering when that joke would turn up.
We acknowledge that we live and film on Treaty 8 territory, the ancestral and present-day home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are grateful to work, live, and learn on the traditional territory of Duncan First Nation, Horse Lake First Nation, and Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, who are the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge the history of this land, and we are thankful for the opportunity to walk together in friendship, where we will encourage and promote positive change for present and future generations.
That is a very special and meaningful statement for us and for our project.